How's it going? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time as a listener, thank you for joining us. If you're a reoccurring listener, thank you for joining us once again. If the subject and the contents of coaching, leadership, and team is something that you're passionate about, it resonates with you, think this channel is a great fit, think this podcast is a great fit, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Have a great day. How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto with the Coaches Podcast, in here with Coach Brian Mehl, head football coach for West Albany High School in Oregon. Coach, thanks for jumping on. Please tell us about your family, journey, background, all that good stuff.
Appreciate you having me on. So Brian Mehl, I'm 41. I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. Both my parents were educators. Both my parents played athletics at the University of Oregon. My dad played football. My mom played basketball and softball. My dad, football coach since really 1979, right? My dad was a head coach do the math. I think he's stopped a head coach at Churchill High School a few years ago. But my dad put in the time as a football coach. I was a kid that had a little brother, played a ton of sports growing up. From the time I could really lace up shoes or put something on, I was playing it. Most of my efforts were on the basketball court, football field, and the baseball field. Went to Churchill High School down in Eugene, played mostly just stuck to baseball and football in those times, and was a high school quarterback in a double wing system. You don't see many double wings systems out there anymore, except I think it'd be really effective.
Really effective now.
Be really effective. It's so different. It has some of that wing T stuff, but it's just totally different. So I was a quarterback from 6th grade to 12th grade in a double wing system. I really never touched the defensive side of the ball till I was maybe 6 games into my junior year. I just wanted more opportunities to play, and threw me in at safety, and things started to click there, and had the opportunity to go play small college football at Linfield College, Linfield University now, and was recruited by Jay Losey. You got to play for Coach Smith as the defensive coordinator for maybe 2 or 3 of those years, Jackson Vaughn for those other 2 years. Loved my experience with, high school, college. Married a gal from Linfield. I have 2 kids. I have 2 daughters. I have a 10 and an 8-year-old. And then kind of getting into the football journey right after college, I moved down to Eugene, worked with my old man for maybe a year, maybe 2 seasons right away. And then had the opportunity to come up to join Coach Nyquist's staff at West Albany, and just an amazing place with, his system. Love Randy to death, but allowed to be an assistant coach for probably 4 to 5 years. Coached a little bit of everything in that period of time. Coached the defensive side of the football as a coordinator for maybe 2, and then was able to take on the head position, I believe, as the 2014 season. I spent a little bit of time on both sides of the ball, definitely on the offensive side of the ball as coordinating, defensive side of the ball coordinating, different positional groups at different times in my coaching journey. Long answer, short answer, that's probably the basics of kind of where I'm at today.
Yeah. What was the why behind getting into coaching? And then if you weren't coaching and following Pop's footsteps, what would you be doing?
Man, that's a good question. Football to me, it was always something we always did, right? So, going to Dad's practices, always being around the game, throwing on the big guy pads. There's a certain love that I have and a passion I have with football. I love the toughness element, the aspect of that and toughness. I love the strategic side. I love scheme work. Football to me never felt like work. Even in college, college is a grind, right? And going to practice and going to special teams meetings or defensive meetings, that never felt like too much, right? It was always a comfortable space. I felt like I had a pretty good feel of those things. And it was kind of a natural progression of, I need to do something like this in my professional life rather than sitting at a desk or having a desk job. I need to be out with kids. I need to be out with young people. I like the competitive aspect of sport, and football certainly gives me that. And I've been doing it since I was a little kid. There's never a year off, right? And so That's really why I got into it. Probably I saw my dad do it all those years. Those were the days. I have a lot of memories growing up where he would do Sunday morning coaches meetings in our living room. And so I would wake up. There would be 8 to 10 coaches in the living room already. I'd grab my bowl of cereal, sit on the couch, and I would just be a sponge, and I'd soak it up for years. It got to the point where these were like VHS tapes, and I would end up, when I got to the point where I could fast forward, I ended up being a part of that at a very young age. And so football was very natural for me. And I feel like I have something to give in the game, and it certainly beats different professional options for me.
Yeah. When you first took over the program in 2014, what was one thing that kind of caught you off guard about, the responsibilities of a head coach?
You can watch amazing men lead. I think of it as parenting. You might see this a little bit, right? You have great examples of people leading or parenting or coaching, and you feel like you have it all figured out, right? Like, hey, I know what it's going to be like to be a dad, and certainly that's going to be true to a certain point. Hey, when I'm a head coach, I'm going to know exactly everything that job is going to entail. And while that is true to a certain point, until you're in the battle, right? Until you're in the moment of being a father, or being a head football coach or a head coach of any sort, you really don't realize how big of a job it has. Like, you wear a lot of hats, you do a lot of things, right? And the only way you really realize, the job is to do it, right? Is to be in that moment of being a father. Even though we get these great examples, and I'm a big believer in learning from others and their examples that they set. But that's how I would probably answer it. Well, your question was the challenge right away. Probably the big challenge for me is Randy Nyquist, an amazing man, amazing coach, right? That was at West Albany for a period of time, that had a ton of success, right? Multiple state championships in the 5A system in the late 2000 era, right? We were able to get another one in 13. So, coming off of a state championship run, and then, when you replace somebody that's so established, right? And I didn't grow up in Albany. I grew up in a different community, and people, for those first couple of years, they're going to challenge you in every way, right? And it's hard to pick up and take something over where someone was so important to our community and kids. And I had confidence in myself that whole time, and I knew I could get it right if I could surround myself with the right type of guys, like the other coaches that lead. And that was some amazing advice that Coach Smith of Linfield advised me back in 2012. Was we visited on this idea of taking this job and being a head football coach. One of those things that always struck me, and that I remember at that time, and that message was, make sure you surround yourself with your kind of guys. It's you can't do this job alone and isolate. You can't pace set everything. You got to have trust in getting the right guys there. And once I heard that from Smith, I was all in. And we have amazing coaches at West Albany. I get to set a lot of the vision and the standards of those things, but our coaches are amazing, and I truly feel like we have a championship staff here.
Yeah. When did you feel, throughout your career, like, okay, this is who I am as a coach? This is what I believe in. I feel really good about my systems and operations. When did that click for you?
Probably, if I probably would have told you in 2012, I had it all figured out, right? What was that? That would have been 27, 28, 29 years old. I thought I had it, but there's a lot I didn't know. I think learning, constantly growing, constantly learning from other coaches, reading, engaging in the work. I think in that period of my football journey, from probably 2007 to 2012, I was just rolling up the sleeves and going to work on how much could I take in, right? And while I never knew I wanted to necessarily be a head football coach, I love coordinating. I love being involved with positional groups. I love being around kids. So I was trying to take in as much as I could, because I truly feel like football and coaching ball gives you, I feel like you have a great impact on that outcome, right? And I learned that. Really got my PhD in football in the days of Linfield, right? Always taking in as much that I could from Coach Vaughn, even if we were talking about inside linebackers or a defensive line play. I was hearing it, absorbing it the best I could, because I knew probably at that time in my life that I was gonna my tracking would have been to be around high school in some way. So I'm certainly not arrived. I feel like I have more meat on the bone. I still feel like I have a lot of more growth that I can still make as a man, as a father, right? As a husband, and certainly as a football coach. Probably, to answer your question, it took me 3 to 5 years. And then once I got real comfortable working through the junk, right? Because there's some junk in that. And then probably around 2016, probably 4 years is where I felt pretty confident, comfortable in the role that I'm at.
Yeah. If you were to talk about your coaching philosophy and what's important to West Albany football, what would that be?
Yeah, so I can probably give you the longer version so I can explain it at least as well as I can explain it. And I can give you maybe the 30-second elevator versions. My philosophy and the belief around coaching is far more than just like the football side of things, right? Like the game is one of the greatest vehicles to teach classrooms, vehicles to teach discipline, accountability, teamwork, resilience, leadership. And I think we have amazing teachers and amazing classes out there, but it's hard to accomplish those same things in a classroom that you can accomplish on a football field, right? So I'm certainly driven by winning. Winning is a lot more fun than losing, right? Wins matter, championships, sure they matter, but the true purpose of a program is developing young people, right, who are prepared to succeed in life long after their playing days are over, right? I think when I'm faced with a big challenge in life, I was like, well, what would a high quality, a great football team, how would they attack this challenge, right, in life? And I certainly go back to the habits that I developed in my playing days, and I still use those today. I believe successful programs are relationship driven. They're built through relationships. They're through a level of daily consistency and daily habits. Culture isn't created through long-winded speeches, right? It's built through the standards that I help establish, and our coaching staff reinforces those, and it's lived out through players. Certainly accountability that we maintain, the example that we set every single day. Players and coaches alike need to clearly understand what is expected of them, and coaches must model those expectations through their own actions, right? So great teams, they certainly have the person at the top that's setting that vision and those standards, but good to great teams and great teams, they're going to be certainly player-led, right? They're going to be extremely connected, right? On and off the field, and they're going to be committed at achieving something that is far greater than yourself or what your last name is, right? And so, I believe you had Ad Rushman on. We as coaches are really good at taking things from others, repackaging it into our own, and then making it ours. Our coaches do this all the time, right? I've certainly done that. So when I look at, what are the things that we're going to be really successful and we're going to hang our hat on at the end of the day, it's going to be really, there's certainly a lot of values that make a successful or a great team, but I'm a believer in attitude. Ad will not fix all your problems. It certainly won't. But if we're talking about behavioral change, right, we control our mindset and how we respond to adverse moments. So in football, there's an adverse moment probably on every snap, right? And so how do we control those inputs? How do we have positive outputs, right? Refer to Ad Rushman, the legend on the value and the impact of attitude, right? You certainly can't be a great team and be a high achiever in life or in football unless you're relentless in your effort, right? You got to be really consistent in that. You got to be relentless in your effort in everything you do, whether it's on the field and practice, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the weight room, right? And those things better be right. You better have good attitude. You better work really hard. I'm a firm believer in self-discipline, right? Knowing what you ought to do and you should do. And so you make that decision to do it when it's like the least convenient for you to do it. Right. And you're kind of faced with that all the time, right? In football and kind of doing your job, knowing what you're supposed to do, you ought to do. And so you do it. You don't abandon that. You don't abandon it, whether you're up 30 or down 30, right? You're really doing the right thing, right? And that covers all parts of your life. And the last thing is, it's not the coolest term or word, but caring, right? So you teammates, value people, value the relationships that you have and the success of that entire program. Continuing, I think, all those values are things you can control, right? And we spend way too much time worrying about things we can't. And, we can't always control those outcomes, right? I can't control, a 6'5", 245-pound DN, right? I don't have that kid, right? And so I can't practice against that kid. And so we certainly will put in things in place to handle that type of individual or good player, but we can't control the other team, the other staff, officials, and that. So why waste any time in worrying about things you can't? So our focus will always remain on, making sure our process is right? Not focusing on external results, right? you can play really good games and not have a result you you wanted to see, right? And you can have a good result, but your process wasn't very good. And those are the things that always kind of get to me or chap me as a coach. When you have success, it's external, but maybe your process wasn't right. So again,
Yeah.
trying to find that competitive edge and competitive excellence. I believe in building a demanding but positive environment where athletes are pushed to grow. Okay, mentally, physically, emotionally, and I think accountability and love can coexist, right? I think those things can be woven together. I think players are always going to need honesty and structure and consistency from the leaders and really adults, and they should know that they are valued first as people and athletes second. So, and I continuing this, I believe, look, as a coach, like you need to have adaptability, right? I think Dan Lanning says it and adapt or die, right? And you better be able to adapt to the changes and the ever flows of high school football and life. Coaches need to build systems around players rather than forcing players into maybe rigid systems, right? I think getting more into maybe like offensive philosophy, defense philosophy. Certainly when we build an offense, the trigger man, the guy that's playing, behind that center is going to dictate what we do as an offense and take another positional group that would apply. Sure, special teams, like if we're looking at like kickoff coverage, we're gonna base our coverage based on who's kicking, right? Like what is his leg like? What's his accuracy like? So again, like, we're gonna do those things and build systems around our players that we have. And so, every team's a little bit different. Kids ask me right now, what's 20, what would it be 26 fall going to look like? Well, it's going to be consistent with some of the things we did, but we're always going to reframe it, redesign it a little bit that we feel like is best suited, to players and to young men. And then look, we better be a tough team, right? We better have unity. We better be disciplined. We better serve each other, right? And so compete with passion, represent our school and our community well, with pride, and hopefully our players are always leaving the program in a better place than maybe when they started as a freshman. So a lot of times success will be measured wins and losses, right? It certainly is. But the standards we hold, the relationships we build, the impact that we make on the lives of young people. And that's hopefully, I try to be a coach of significance in those areas where life after football, these kind of standards or values that help them achieve happiness and success.
Yeah. Kind of diving into that a little bit. First off, love that. That was good stuff right there. Just as far as like actionable steps to get your players to buy in, anything outside of the field, outside of the weight room, or anything maybe unique that you guys do on the field or in the weight room that helps, establish that environment for these guys.
Yeah. So, one of our major pushes is to make sure we're developing young adults, right? And, I think we train 36 weeks out of the year in from the time of September to June. And then we pick up, I don't know, maybe 7 more weeks in the summer. So, you do the math on how many weeks are in a year and then how many weeks are we training. And I think what you do in a weight room has the greatest impact on, growth, improvement, training the brain, having the physical body, right? Training the body, impacting the brain, that mind and body relationship, building toughness in a weight room, right? Like certainly we're going to put things in place in practice to build, competitive toughness and those things are good, right? They are, but grinding in a weight room is, I think that's where you have the greatest lines of mental toughness. And I think to get back to your question, like you got to have the relational capacity as a coach, right? Like you need to be able to relate to guys. I try to be as relational as I can. I'm probably like 75% on a relational spectrum and 25% transactional, right? Like I need to be transactional for sure. There's things that I'm going to have to do, but I try to be relationship driven, really knowing, I'm going to have a bunch of freshmen coming in here in a couple weeks. And like my goal by the first week of June is to know every single kid by their first name, right? Like, if I can do that, our other staff can do it. Know them by name. Don't call them, by a jersey number, whatever you see on their head, right? And I think the relationships you make, building toughness in a weight room and resiliency in a weight room and toughness, I think those things are certainly near the top of that answer for me. I think we do a lot of film. We do a lot of in-season film. We do out-of-season film. That's a pretty engaging classroom for us. It's certainly not just our offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator speaking to the room for 30 minutes and letting them out of it, right? Like they're engaged, the players are engaged in that process. We're definitely leading it and leading that message, but we are actively engaged as young men in that room because it's them. They're the ones that are out there on the field. They're underneath the bright lights. Those are the guys that are playing and putting themselves out on the line. And we're trying to give them everything they can, but we need them engaged in that process for them to truly get it, right? So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it did. It did. It did. Just to dive into that just a little bit more, from a team building standpoint, aside from weight room football, because I agree with you. I think that's where that's where you get your greatest gains from a cohesiveness, from a mental toughness standpoint, from a team chemistry standpoint. But is there anything you guys are doing off the field?
Yeah, we certainly, through my years, we've done different things. For periods of time, we've done leadership council stuff where we've had not just seniors, but we include even incoming freshmen part of a committee and a group that we're really trying to train these guys that, have these markers of really being a leader at some point in their journey. And so we try to, like, why wait till they're seniors, right? Like we should identify these kids and these 3 to 4 kids at a freshman level, 3 to 4 kids in a sophomore, junior, and senior level. And that's where we multiple opportunities will bring guys in. Certainly I will lead it at times, but have them be a part of that process. Like, what are we're getting these guys, like, what are we going to stand for? Right. They're involved in, some of the value stuff, some of the procedural stuff. I try to include them. I try to be democratic in some of those things, try to meet them in the middle on some things. And if they can explain the why to me and why that's effective, I'm willing to listen. Right. We have coaches that do, O-line barbecues, right? I mean, you got to take care of those O-linemen, right? And, our offensive coordinator does a really good job in his work. I mean, you should have him on here sometime. You will probably eventually, but he's amazing. He really does. I think him and his wife do barbecues with the guys a few times out of the year. I've certainly done those at different times, but, like you got to do the football stuff, but then you got to do the stuff on the side, right? And we're talking about, a high value organization, and we strive to make an impact that way.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Can you just give me just a quick breakdown of what your week looks like in season, game week? Just quick, doesn't have to be too much detail. And then on top of that, what's a drill or team period that you guys currently do that you wish you did in 14 when you first started off as a head coach?
Sure. Good question. I think effective programs, it's probably going to look very similar, right? I think if you traveled around the state, you watched a highly effective practice, I think you're going to see something that aligns, and they're pretty closely related. I think you play all this work from Friday on, right? You play the game on Friday night. Hopefully you had a good result and a good outcome there. I'm someone that can't turn the brain off. So I'm usually up till 3 or 4 in the morning, still breaking it down. My brain doesn't say I'm tired, but it won't say yes, right? And so I usually sleep a couple hours, and then I go back and do it all over again. And then I try to spend time with my family on that Saturday, right? I try to be done by 9 a.m. and give my daughters, my wife, the attention they need through a long week. Typical Sunday meetings, O&D meetings on Sunday as typical. And then Monday is, our JVs are playing on Mondays. And so that makes it a little tough to have a really effective practice. And, you're only 48 hours after the game anyway. So our Mondays look similar, right? All your install, all your run, getting things moving again, and all your install. And then we get Tuesday, and that's work. It's full padded, it's full go. When I say full go, we're not taking guys to the ground. We typically don't do that. But it's every bit of 2.5 hours. Our Mondays are a little lighter in total time. And then, 2 hours and 30 is probably about right early in the season for your Tuesday and Wednesdays for me. Thursdays probably are more like 2 hours, right? And so Tuesday's a work day. It's a lunch pail attitude, right? You better come to work. It's physical. It's uncomfortable. You have the first kind of install or revision of that game plan that is in, and now we're living it out. And so it's not the greatest thing, right? When you see we're not oiled up the way we need to be, but Tuesday and Wednesday are similar. We're certainly doing special teams on those days. Thursday's kind of your overall cleanup, you kind of run throughs and a lot of situational football stuff. And then Fridays are let her rip, right? And then there's no break. It starts all over again, right? Like there's no break in this, right? I get my sleep on Thursday nights, right? Wednesday and Thursdays are a day I'm content. I'm relaxed. I'm picking up the week on Wednesday and Thursday. but it's a mad rush and scramble from the Friday night conclusion of the game to the probably Tuesday night and Wednesday night, and we better have it fixed on Wednesday or it could be ugly on Friday. So, second part of that was a drill. Really good question on that. There's certainly things I believe in, how we build, how we grow on the football field. Those things don't change a whole lot. I think this last year was a great year for me. One of the more challenging years I've had. We graduated a lot from our 2024 team, a lot of young green players. And, we started 3-0. It was kind of that like false sense of success. Like we found a way to win, but it just did not meet our standards as coaches. And, a lot of hair pulling out, even though we were 3-0, and then we lose our next three and against quality teams, right? We lose to Lebanon and Dallas and Silverton. Silverton was a state championship in there, and all those teams were playoff games. And we're sitting at 3-3. And we've had a lot of discussions at staff about, how can we get this? How can we get on the bus, right? How can we pull the rope in the right direction? And our connections with kids and that love for one another was always there. It wasn't like we were banging against each other and it wasn't good. It was always good. But that was I remember it today. I brought my OC over about 10:30 at night after a game, and we just sat on the back and we just hashed it out till about 2 a.m. And this is how we're going to do it. And what I've always seen half line work, right? Half line work to me was a lot of times was just my understanding. It was a product when you maybe didn't have enough bodies, right? And because you don't have maybe a full line or a full group, sometimes you see that at JV or JV2 football and developing some half line, but I'd never done half line work at any point of my football career until this year. And, we kind of got tired of, when you go on 11 on 11 in team periods, and sometimes that group of 11 on the other side, sometimes they're playing out of position, and sometimes they're not giving you the look that you like or that you're demanding of. And now we're not truly getting better, right? And so that was where we established a half line, practice period. This won't change for me. Like this will start exactly the same from week 6 on. This is what we did. We warmed up and we were right in the fire immediately working half line work. There was that duality to it in that we had our defensive staff working our defensive guys, our offensive staff working our offensive guys. We had a coach on every position and tracking them with their own eyes and vision, constant feedback. But what this allowed us to do is if we're going to take our center, our right guard, and our right tackle tight end, and then we'll throw a receiver out there. And now because at West Albany, we still have two-way guys, right? And we're going to get those guys playing both ways. But that allows us to play best versus best, right? And we're not tackling backs, right? Most of the time, guys are still on their feet at the end of every play. But what we have is we're running an offensive play against some front that we either coach on our defense side of the ball. It's live on aggressive at the line of scrimmage, but then we also have the perimeter going on at the same times. Whether we have RPOs built in, well, we're having man match players or zone players out in space where it's highly competitive to those guys on the edges and the perimeter, but then the box work is where it needs to be. And so what this allowed us to do was get a lot more plays in much faster, playing against good versus good. And I think then our 11 on 11 periods, we're just a little bit smoother in the delivery of those things, And
well,
so
that's good stuff.
Why did it take me 12 years to figure this out, right? Or 17 years in my coach? Like this should have been something I did from day one, certainly freshman level football, right?
Did you guys have a stack safety in the fit too, and a corner on the outside, or that was on air for the receiver out there?
It was never really on air. Like we wouldn't, I don't believe we might've run some quarter stuff against it. Right. But I think probably 75% of that was really attacking man coverage stuff. And so, and so then, then you're working right side and you flip it and go left side. And now your right guard that plays some D line is in that work, right? So we're getting a lot of plays in, but it's like no messing around. Like that warm up's done in it, right? And it's live, it's impactful, and I wouldn't change it. It would be hard for me to change it again. And it's not a real long period in total length, right? It's probably 15, 20 minutes max. And it turned out to be really effective for us.
No, I like that you guys start off with it too, because I feel like that just kind of sets the tone and energy for practice, especially when you got good on good. But that was on top of what you said, right? That was kind of interesting because I did an interview with Tony Smith. He's a St. Paul head coach, and so they're playing 8-man football. So how do you get good reps, good live reps? When you have to self-serve pretty much everything. But they did exactly what you did. Just as far as, they do half line. And I think for them too, like, a lot of times their guards are probably playing backers. So they can see how they're supposed to fit and they can see how they're, reacting as O-line. So I think it's just, a compounding effect, especially if you got a guard that's playing backer, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But that's good stuff right there, Coach. Is there an overlooked or underappreciated situation or aspect in the game of football?
Special
This
teams.
could be just subjective to your opinion.
Yeah, I think head coaches out there, if there's a head coach listening to this, like, you better be dialed into special team work, right?
Yeah.
I think that's an area where we have a natural tendency to forget about it, right? Or you kind of push it to the side. And I mean, I would love to see every game in high school football in 0 week if I had it, and like show me all the errors in special teams in week 0, week 1, week 2, and then how that correlated to team success. I think special teams has got to be something near the top on that discussion. Underappreciated, that was part of your question.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the two, overlooked or underappreciated.
Overlooked. I would say special teams gets overlooked all too often.
Yeah.
Appreciated. I don't know if I have a good answer with that.
Yeah. No, I talked to Coach John Mannion, and I think his last year at Mountainside, they blocked 6 kicks and they ended up winning 3 games by 1 point, which is,
I mean,
just crazy.
I block field goals, extra points. I've been a part of those where 2 of those in my career have ended in a win by a block, right? And the state championship game in 13, that ended in, it was an overtime, but that ended with a block. They scored first in overtime. We blocked it. And then we went to score and kick an extra point and won it. That's certainly, you remember that. And then, I think we did have a blocked one for the win. And that was a pretty amazing feeling when you get one for the win.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, John's a great coach. I coached against John as a coordinator. I think for 3 or 4 of those years, I had a lot of respect for him.
Yeah. If I were to come and watch your practice, what would you want me to take away as a spectator from, just your identity as a team?
Good question. I hope you could learn a lot. I hope what you see is a highly organized plan, right? Like, there's not downtime. There's not kids standing around. We have, usually about 120 to 135 to play football at West Albany. Freshmen are kind of removed from that group, but you're going to have a JV and a varsity group. And I hope that you don't see kids laying around or standing around. They're quickly moving with pace, and it's organized, and everybody knows what the expectation, the standard is. There's no curveballs there. But the bigger things, I would like you to see that our kids are connected, right? They're showing energy in the appropriate ways, right? They're handshaking, they're fist pumping, right? They're chest pumping in the appropriate times. I think winning teams find a way. I think they did a basketball study on this, an NBA basketball. I'd have to pull it up again, but I think they tracked every NBA team and
how many touches
often they make physical contact with each other. And the team that made the most physical contact was the team that won the title that year. So I'd like the appropriate level of physical contact for sure, but I would love for you to see connection and love for one another. Organized is how I'd want you to see that.
Yeah. No, to go back to the NBA study, it would actually be interesting to, dive into, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, was the relationship first and then, was comfortability with, pats on the back and high fiving? Or was it almost like a little bit of a fake it till you make it type thing? And,
Sure.
That kind of organically, helped with the relationship and the cohesiveness of the team. That would be interesting to dive into that. If you could coach any player, past or present, who would it be and why?
Whoa, at any level?
Any level.
Any level, man.
I mean, you can get them in high school, or you can get them at, if they're pro or college.
Yeah, give me Reggie White. Give me Lawrence Taylor. Give me a pass.
They're going to say, fuck you, coach. I ain't listening to you.
Who do you too? I have nothing to tell them except just watch and be just impressed with just how they attack that thing. I'll put on some Reggie White videos and his hump move, and just an amazing pass rusher, and LT definitely changed the game of football. And I would say those guys, probably a guy that I just have a lot of respect and how impactful those guys are in modern day football today.
Yeah.
Those are some old timers, right? But football is very different schematically, and the style of the rules back then. And those guys found a way to get it done, and that'd be awesome.
You kind of answered this a little earlier when you were talking about, football and sports being, the greatest classroom for success. But in your opinion, and I want you to kind of geek out on this, in your opinion, why is football the greatest sport?
Yeah, man. I played a lot of high level baseball and I love the sport of baseball. Certainly being on the mound and having the ball in your hand is a pretty amazing feeling. And, if you have some ability, there's a rush that can go involved and be involved with that. In my journey of sport, there's nothing that feels like my stomach is up through my throat and nerves or adrenaline. There's nothing that I've felt ever in my life that has allowed me to feel that way. Right. And football is the only thing that could give me that. And that's why I ended up playing college football. Right. I, I have a lot of respect for all sports and what they do and their own challenges. But um, how many people come to a game, right? Like all across America, high schools across America, to the sicko fans in our communities that are in college and NFL, and how crazy that is, and how it's just a huge deal. I certainly love that aspect of football, but I like the gladiator tough man's game. Like I like the challenge of it. I think in certain sports, like you can have one amazing player, and in certain sports, like sometimes that's all you need, right? Is one guy standing on the mound that's throwing the ball in a certain way and dominating. In basketball, you can see that a little bit. And there's not much you can do if you're on that other team. But football, I mean, you could throw a D1 scholarship player on an opposing team, and I don't know how much they would impact it, right? I mean, maybe an interior D lineman that can shut down like one side of the offensive front, but you can always plan and do something else if that. So like it takes a team, right? Like a team of all teams, and there's always a role for, there's 125 guys that play ball here. There's a role for every single one of them, right? Like we don't need 125 starting quarterbacks, but there's a way you can find and impact the team and find happiness and success. And so back to your question, there's not many things in life that can make me feel the way I feel when it comes to football: passion, adrenaline, nerves, that thing.
Yeah.
But then how it rallies and, fair or foul, like ugliness and all that stuff that goes around sport and competition, like civil rivalries and all that stuff's great. And I think, not that those things don't occur in other sports. I have a lot of respect for those other things, but football just hits a little different. At least in my opinion, it hits different. And I know there's a lot of people out there that share that same opinion.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Coach. A great answer. Let you know beforehand, my daughter's question, Anela question of the day, and it was, what's your favorite TV show and why?
Good. Oh,
My
wow.
wife and I need something to watch tonight.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
Like, I'm in the messy middle of life, right? I'm 41, one family, like craziness. You know, to be honest, I don't watch a lot of TV. I'll watch a sporting event here or there. But a lot of times in my life, I don't sit down and watch. I certainly never watch a TV show, Anela. I don't watch news. But I will watch a series. I watch, gosh, so my favorite series. I'll watch The Office with my wife a little bit. So that is a show that I will watch.
Yep,
I
it's a good
wasn't a
show.
huge fan of The Office at the earlier parts of my life, but in the last couple of years, I'll watch it. We have a good time doing that.
What does the word team mean to you?
Team, unselfishness, sacrifice, connection, knowing that all of this is much bigger than you, right? That you have a greater purpose. That's why I believe football is like the greatest team sport for the reasons I discussed earlier, right? But the unwavering commitment, right? Excellence. Every person has a role and is valued: coaches, players, families, that kind of thing. But I think of unselfishness and sacrifice, right? It doesn't matter who scored as long as we scored, right? I think, on every play, you have 5 offensive linemen that are like, their only job on every offensive football snap is to protect someone else. And I don't know if there's ever any other sport out there in our world that their job is to protect, right? And you're not going to see an offensive lineman get their name in the paper, right? But like, those guys sacrifice. We'll probably get 60 to 80 snaps of offensive football on a Friday night. And, there's, for every single one of those snaps, they're not going to get the ball, or at least I'm not going to run a trick play to get them the ball. You'll find other guys that will do that. But they're unselfish, right? And they're the true winners of a football team is how you play live scrimmage.
We talked a little bit earlier just about the kind of the uncertainties of the job when you first took over, and stuff that may have caught you off guard. Speaking kind of present tense, what are some of the greater challenges for you as a head coach or coaching just in general?
Yeah, I think it's certainly challenging to get everybody on the same page. I get to set the vision, but our coaches really keep establishing that vision. The players live that out. I think we see challenges in commitment. And probably every high school in America has kids that are unconditionally committed to that school, that program, to their work. But I coach a lot of guys that they're there for other reasons, right? They're there because their old man wants them to play, or they're there because their friends play. And, hopefully we can get everybody to be committed in the right direction. There's always outliers, right? There's always people that want to challenge the system, right? And I think it was a little different for me when I was in a coordinating position. I'm not currently in a coordinating position now. I think it was easier for me to handle maybe conflict when I was, because I could say, well, this one's on me, right? And I'd rather them really come after me on things than it's hard for me to sit in the position of the head coach and see people. There's a lot of naysayers always, right? There's always, especially when it comes to play calling or what. But I think it was easier for when I was doing it, right? Because then I felt like I could fall on my own sword a little bit. I really want our coordinators to fall on their own sword, right? They're the leaders of that work, right? We're engaged in that process together democratically, but I want to give those guys free rein to fall on their own sword, if you know what I'm saying, and not where I am forcing things on them a little bit. Well, I'll challenge them. That's my job. But I think I'm way more established now than I was. I'm way more confident and comfortable in the position that I'm in now, but it wasn't always that way, right? Like it takes a little bit of time. And, if you're committed to the process of growth and improvement, right, there's something nice at the very end of it.
You kind of mentioned, you have a bunch of different players that might not be out there because they love ball, and that, the challenge is, getting all of them on board. So how do you go about, addressing someone who's not meeting the expectations or struggling with effort during practice?
Yeah, just honesty, right? Like, I think when you try to be relational, I think similar. If we were going to go play golf today, right? Like, we have our 11 or 12, 13 clubs in the bag. We're going to have to pull out a different club to shoot the shot, right? We can't, we can't hit the big stick every time, right? Or the driver every time. Like, every shot's going to require a different club. And I think having those tools in your toolbox as a coach are going to be effective, right? Like, you need to know the human, right? Like, we're in the human business. And, I think my first way would be to make sure we're doing it in a quiet way, right? Where I don't really find pleasure in blasting the kid in front of another 100 people and adults, right? I think there's a way to attack that and handle it, and we both get what we want, and in that kind of quiet setting or pulling off to the side. But I'm certainly not afraid to let her rip. But when I let those things rip, I better have a really good relationship with that kid, right? I better know his mom and dad and what makes him tick. And I think when you're a high trust organization, you can do that type of work because that guy knows, like, hey, he has my back, right? And I certainly wouldn't do that unless I had a relationship with the kid. I think, sure, I can set standards and those things, but I better know that kid. But I would first just, a quiet setting first, and if it's not meeting your standard, let's get it fixed. Like, we can't tolerate things that aren't well, right? Once we tolerate it, that kid will recognize it and see it, and they'll just keep going down that cycle because I've allowed it or we've allowed it. So you better squash it, right? You better squash it right away. But it's just the method of how you do it, or what club are you going to pull from the bag to attack that challenge for each individual kid.
Yeah. Kind of coaching a little bit at Linfield and then coaching a little bit in the college ranks. When I always thought of high school coaching, I always thought, man, the parents must be a pain. But every time I ask the question as far as, like, what are some of the greatest challenges within coaching, like whether it's football, track, basketball, I mean, no one's really mentioned the parents. So how do you guys, as, coaching staffs, how do you guys get out in front of that and make sure there's a, strong relationship with the folks?
Good question. I feel really good at West Albany with, the players and the parents and the families that I've been able to surround myself with, or it's never perfect, right? But the things that work are just honesty, responding to communication immediately, not letting things wait, allowing yourself to visit with them as appropriate, right? I don't really need 350 parents actively engaged in West Albany football. I do to support their son or their daughter if they're playing ball. That's what I need out of them, right? To show that unconditional love, regardless of performance on the field, and that that's what I need out of. I think we all need that out of parents today. But there's going to be conflict, right? I think attacking those things head on and finding the right time and the space to have disagreement or conflict, and usually I prefer to do those face to face if we need to do it. But yeah, we need the parents. I kind of like that healthy distance too, right? Get parents involved in some engagement stuff, right? Volunteering, some fundraising efforts, some team meals, right? And that's typically what parents want. I don't think a lot of these moms and dads want to necessarily coach football at West Albany. If they do, let's visit on it. Let's see how it can work. But really, we just want parents to love their son, and if you want to talk about the game, maybe just wait till the morning. And if that kid fails in that game on Friday night, he already knows, right? He doesn't need your stereotypical dad would, want to hash that thing out. And I would just say, as a dad, let the kid sleep on it, right? He already knows. And, have that conversation over breakfast the next day if you're willing. Remember, he already knows that failure took place. And at the end of the day, that kid just wants to know that my mom, my dad love me, right? And they still support me regardless of, something that we do for fun, right? So, I don't know if I answered that question well, but
No, that was good. That was good. That was really good. You kind of addressed it earlier. When you guys went on that 3-game slide, what do you do, or what did you do when your team, faced that setback and, that 3-game slide? I know you talked about your experience with the offensive coordinator and how you guys, came about establishing half-line drill, but how did you address the team and the rest of the guys?
they're gonna look to me to where we're going, right? I think in moments of adversity where the outcomes aren't where you need them to be or you want them to be, you got to go back to those basics of standards and values, right? If our attitude's right, our efforts right, we're disciplined and we care and love each other, right? Things will work out in the end. I think that was an example of our 2025 season, right? It's not like things changed, but it's just I have to reestablish or maybe go back to that foundation, right? Go back to the foundation. Sometimes you lose it, right? Sometimes you have teams where these guys just make it happen, right? And other times you got to constantly reinforce it. And in those moments of challenges and adversity, I just go back to what you can control and be all in that work, right? And be unwavering in your commitment as a leader and make sure, because the only thing on leadership that I can depend on is myself and my coaching staff. And hopefully we've done a good job in raising our next leaders and player-driven leaders. Hopefully we've done a good job on that. But you can't always rely on them. I mean, how many times I've heard coaches say, not necessarily here, but when we talk to coaches or we talk in passing, it's we just don't have a lot of leaders on our team, right? And I've heard that so many times. That may be true on a player level, but I better lead, right? Our coaching staff better lead. We have, 17, 18 coaches. Those guys are required to lead that, be a positive influencer on the messaging, commitment, adversity, that needs to be right. And that better be right all the time, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. Aside from winning, what other metrics do you use to define success as a coach?
Good question. I always love seeing guys that I coached 10, 15 years ago. I'll run into them in the community. An occasional thank you, right? Or, I'm married now. Here's my newborn. That stuff's awesome. I love seeing guys. But I think to attack your question from not from an external level, I think I'm really confident that if I can get a kid to play 4 years of football at West Albany, I feel like I've set him up. We, right? In that process, we've set him up to find happiness, success, and in his life after high school. And, most teams you'll have a high amount of freshmen, maybe 40 to 50 on every given year, but I don't have 40 or 50 seniors at senior night, right? And I'll lose half, right? At least half or more. And there's a lot of parts in that journey, right? There's a lot of factors as to why I can't maintain that. But I feel really confident if those kids, are 4-year football players at West Albany, they're going to be all right, right? They're
Yeah.
going to, life's not fair, life's not easy, but football's kind of the same way, right? And you've given them a lot of the tools that they need to make an impact in their lives, right? And being a good father and being a good husband and being a good employee. And I think if you can do those things here, then you're going to be successful outside of high school.
It's a great answer. If you could go back and give your younger self some advice,
As a
what would that
coach
advice
or
be?
as a coach or player?
Coach.
Coach. Probably in my earlier days, I probably spent too much time worrying about what other people thought. I always kind of wanted acceptance, but I'm 41 now. I've kind of been able to work through the junk of that, and uh, not that I don't care what people think, but sometimes I just don't care, right? Like, I am who I am, right? I'm leading what's comfortable and most genuine form for me. I care less about what, on those outside, what they think. And I just care what we in this circle think, right? So that would probably be the advice to me. And that's probably the best answer I could give you because I was always pushed to learn and grow, right? It wasn't that I wasn't working hard but like coaching football is like, it's a lifelong thing. It's not like constantly reshaping or sharpening your sword, right? It's not. I mean, look at the guys that are 60 and 70 years old that are still coaching, right? Like they're still doing it. Admire those guys and the careers they've led. Um, but you can't ever be satisfied. You can't ever like be settled, right? This game, it's demanding, and you better roll with the punches and keep rolling.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Any final advice on coaching, teaching leadership for the good of the community?
Yeah, I think what you're doing is awesome. I think if there's coaches that are tuned into these things, I think these are people that have interest and passion in growing in the game of football, and we need young people out there that are going to be that next wave of coaches that are here for the right reasons, right? That impact kids. And I think, both of us alike have probably had many coaches that have been vital to our growth and improvement and happiness and success in our lives. And we need more people doing that. And I'm just privileged that I get the opportunity to, and it's a cherished opportunity, and it's something I don't take lightly. But, to young coaches, like just absorb and be a sponge and put yourself out there and accept new challenges, right? Like learn everything you can in coaching, right? Learn from others, right? And have some good examples of guys that or gals that do it well, right? And we take things from people just by watching, right? And I learn a lot more by watching a practice or watching a coach than I do maybe reading a book, right? I think we're mammals. We learn from other mammals, right? And I think anytime you have an opportunity to surround yourself with coaches and learn and grow in the game, that's going to be pretty impactful for you. And again, we need young coaches that are going to keep filling these roles because our society and our youth needs it.
Yeah. Awesome, Coach. Well, I appreciate your time, man. Finally, I got you on.
You bet. It's been some time, but I'm happy to do it. And thanks for having me on, and best of luck to you, and let me know if I can help you.
All right. Appreciate you, man.